Yo, Awkwa here. Today we're doing a behind the beat breakdown on Cool People, which is a song by Señor Gigio and 1AM. I produced this song last year and the music video actually just dropped this month, so be sure to check it out. I'm gonna go over how I selected the sounds, how I chopped the sounds, how I produced the beat as a whole, so let's get into it. So first things first is the intro sample chops that you'll hear that are super signature to the song as a whole. They're very thematic, and check it out. This is what we're gonna break down. It's actually akin to something that I would normally play, but in this case, I was just using my ear, using my intuition, and hand selecting all of these samples and then piecing them together, and then I chop them down after the fact. So the first thing that I came up with was this electric piano. Then I essentially just took all of those bass notes that you can hear subtly and I duplicated them into a more realistic sounding bass. So it's got like a really Motown feel. Next thing I jumped into was this here. And I was really coming up with all types of samples as well as creating my own little layers as I went. And then I reduced them down after the fact. And that's one way that I like to approach a lot of the beats that I produce for others as well as myself, because it really gives you the ability to just create spontaneously and have fun with it and then reduce back into the, the best parts. Then I added this horn in. Here was this harp that I added in. It was like an orchestral harp. Now, when I was selecting these samples, I didn't necessarily just like find everything in the same key. I was finding samples that were out of key, and I was finding things that weren't necessarily in tune, and then I was making them in tune. So it's a very tedious process, and I would say overall, I spent probably like 70% of the time, if not more, on just sound selection alone. That made out for me being able to move swiftly once it came to arranging, once it came to breaking everything down. So first thing you notice off the bat, this is not the pitch that the final sample is in. So I selected all of these pieces, fine-tuned them into one another, panned them out, etc., shaped them out through mixing and whatnot. And then what I did was I dropped the pitch once I got into chopping the sample, which I'll show you here in a second. This is what I ended up with. Oh, and there's strings as well. I'm not using all of this in context, right? Because once I go in and chop it up, create the marker points, and I start replaying it on my own, I'm playing all of this as a new instrument, essentially. This became the first little intro piece. So we've got this. Now the bass is alive. All the high end, the low end is opened up. Then after that is when I started bringing in a little bit of like risers, some scratch effects and samples that I found. And I just kind of cut them up and put them in as I felt sounding. And again, some of these might not have been in time. Like some of them might have been faster or slower. And then I just, did my thing and pulled them into place, and then pitched them up, pitched them down accordingly, maybe threw some effects on wherever needed, or sound shaped it out. And then once I had my sample chop piece, which is basically, this is the main line, then I pretty much went to another piece within the whole sample to create the secondary part. So it's the same kind of rhythm, same kind of feel, but because I'm moving at different sample points, it turned out really cool. I did all the sampling first, I did the chop points first, and then once I had those, I actually played them to the drums. Boom, boom, boom. So basically I started off with these different sample pieces. Just as like some crackle. I got this kick here, which I really liked. I had a secondary kick. I had this little almost like rim shot or snare. Had another snare, had a third snare, had a clap, and so basically it's alternating into this pattern. Which actually isn't a traditional boom bap, it's actually more of like a Bay Area feel if you listen to it. But because of the sound selection and because of like the timbre of everything, it gives you more of that classic old school feel. But the rhythm, the drum beat itself is actually very hyphy if you listen. See, this is the thing that really trips you up when you're listening to it, because that is the primary foundation of the beat. So I'll show you the secondary layer of the drums right here. So So that's like way more classic, right? That's like 90s stuff. Maybe even 80s, 90s. So you got this, the first layer. Then you have the second layer. And when you bring them together, and from there, it was a wrap. Like that was pretty much the beat, which is cool people. Be sure and stay tuned for the 3-track EP by Señor Gigio and 1 AM, and it's produced by myself. It's a 3-track EP, and it's going to be dropping on the 24th of April. Check out the Cool People music video, which Señor Gigio put a lot of time into, and the entire mix is actually done by 1 AM, so there was a lot of collaborative effort put on all fronts of this. If you need beats or you're interested in learning how to mix and produce, be sure and visit awkwavision.com, and have a creatively productive day.